Danvers. My name is Jasmine Ramon, and I'm the Director of Equity and Inclusion for the town. I'm here to recap a summer series I'm hosting called Let's Talk About Race. This past week, week 2, we talked about intersectionality, and I'm joined here today by Shilpa Jacobie, librarian, human rights and inclusion member, town resident, and Isiah Young, my intern. So based on your experiences there last Thursday, can you tell me a little bit about what you learned about intersectionality?
So I already had a basic understanding of intersectionality, and as I understand it, it's all these different social identities that make up a person and how that impacts our lives. So if I were to look at anybody or even myself through just one lens, that gives me a very narrow view of who I am as a person or who somebody else is. So it's important for me to understand how I came into these identities and where I have agency with these identities and where I don't have agency. So for instance, my intersectionalities would be I'm brown and I'm a woman and I'm an immigrant and I'm a non-citizen and a working mom. And those are just some of my social identities. But if I look at just 2 or 3 of them, being a brown immigrant, for instance, and knowing that there are maybe some people in my community who believe this false rhetoric that immigrants are stealing jobs from Americans, that impacts me in a negative way. It impacts how other people see me. It impacts how I do my job. So I think that that's important to just look at people not through that very narrow view, but look at all these different things that make up a person and how that impacts them.
Definitely. It sounds like your group probably had some really in-depth conversations.
They did.
For sure.
They absolutely did.
Isiah, what about you?
Well, going into the conversation, I didn't really have a basic understanding of what intersectionality was at all. But coming out of it, I think I have a much better understanding of intersectionality. And so from my understanding, intersectionality is like the understanding of our social, of all of our social identities and how they can affect, like how they affect us and how they affect other people, and how oppression plays into that. So for me, it's very important, not only like with the work I do with you, but also work I do with Ms. Ridley, to like learn more about racism and systemic racism, or inequalities as a whole. And and intersectionality plays a big part in that, because there are other ways people are oppressed other than by their race. For example, like being a woman or being young. Being a younger person's one of them. And there's a lot of different social identities that I didn't really, for a while, I looked at it very linearly. Like, oh, in order to address these problems, you do this. But intersectionality has helped me understand that it's the system that we exist in is very complex and requires complex solutions. And there's not simply one solution to one problem.
I love that. And I'm also really interested, right, because we're trying to get more people to come. I know I personally was really excited to see how the turnout grew even from week 1 to week 2. And so from your perspectives, how was the conversation? Did you like the setup? What are you looking forward to in the future?
I liked the informality of it. We were all in different groups of maybe 4 or 5 people. Some groups were intergenerational. Some had maybe older people and some very young people. But I think everyone came with an open mind. You didn't have to have read the books or know the terms. You just had to have an open mind and want to learn. And I think there were some people who just wanted hope that things were going to get better, because in my group there were always older folk who had fought this fight before and like, I don't know why this is still happening. Why are we still talking about this? And making that peace that maybe this won't get better in our lifetime, but we can make those steps that maybe the next generation can have it better. So I think it's a great way to bring groups of people, especially an intergenerational group of people, together and have these really important but difficult conversations. And just come as you are. You don't just leave all the baggage behind. Come as you are. Come with a spirit, an open-minded spirit to learn and understand.
Thank you.
I really enjoy the conversations because I get to interact with people I usually don't interact with. And so, as she was saying, like that intergenerational aspect of it, I don't really get time to often speak of people who are much, much older than me, or people who have a lot more experience than me, because I don't know, I just don't have the time, or I don't really see them that often. And these conversations, like this week and especially last week, I got to have conversations with people who have a lot more experience than me, who have like lived their life and have fought this battle before, and it's really interesting to see their perspectives on things, because I think there's a big divide between my generation and older generations because of technology and because of social media and how that affects inequality on a much grander level. And it's just interesting to hear what they think, and it's also very informal. Like I don't feel pressure on me to like have to perform. I don't feel pressure to have to say a certain thing or think a certain way. It's very informal and very welcoming. It's just a little loud sometimes.
Thank you so much for that. And I also know that in my role as host, but kind of pseudo-facilitator, I've really loved being able to pop in and out of conversations and just see from the same 2 prompts the many different directions that the conversation can go in. So I'm really grateful to have that kind of bird's eye view, and I'm looking forward to this upcoming week. So thank you so much for that feedback. And Danvers, to the community, if you want to join, we're back at it for week 3 this Thursday from 5:15 to 6:45 in the standing room on the first floor of the library. We still have snacks, and it's not too late to jump into this series. And this upcoming week we'll be focusing on what are microaggressions. So stop by to learn, and I hope Isiah and Shilpa, you come back and bring some friends.